Antonio Sanchez, you composed the score for Birdman. It's the first film score you've composed. So how did you become involved with the film?
Well, I've known Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu for a number of years now, since 2002, and he's a big music fan. We have a little bit of a backstory, which is interesting. He was a DJ in Mexico when I was a teenager in one of my favorite radio shows. They had like a day show and then a night show, and they played the hippest music on the radio in Mexico. Stuff that I had never listened to. I was a rocker back then, so I was really, opening my ears to new things that these guys were playing. Him and Martin Hernandez, who is his sound design guy for his movies now, and. uh, One night I was listening to the radio, to their show. It was called Magic Nights 96.9 WFM, and I heard this tune come on, and it was really cool. I loved it, and I waited until to see who it was, and it was the Pat Metheny group. So fast forward, I don't know how many years later, and I'm playing with the Pat Metheny group in Los Angeles. And then after the show, there was an after party, and I'm walking towards my dressing room, and there's this guy who intercepts me, and he says that he's a big fan of Pat, and that he's so glad, I'm playing drums with him now because I'm from Mexico and he's from Mexico. And I was actually kind of a little annoyed because I wanted to go to my dressing room because I was all sweaty and stuff. And this guy would not stop talking to me, and so I was trying to make a little bit of small talk, and I said, yeah, okay, so you're from Mexico too, and what do you do? And he said, well, I direct films and commercials and stuff. And I thought, this is LA, probably every other guy says it's a movie director. So I asked him, so anything I've seen? And he says, Amores Perros and 21 Grams. And I was like, oh my God, you're Alejandro, and then we hit it off, and we started talking, and we kept in touch ever since. And every time I would go to LA, I would call him. Maybe he would come to one of my shows. And then last year, January 2013, he called me out of the blue, and he said, Antonio, I'm working on my new film, and I would love for the score to be just drums. Are you in? Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do it, man. So basically that's how it all started.
He does the film especially has a very musical rhythmic quality that you can sense, not just in the music but in the whole story and structure and the way it's filmed. Was it collaborating with Alejandro a lot like collaborating with another musician in a way?
No, it was very different, which I really welcomed, because I'm used to collaborating with other musicians, and jazz musicians are by nature creative people. But I think it's a different kind of just mindset, when you're working with imagery, it's very different than if you're just working with sounds. Because every musician I play with, we're trying, of course, to make music together, but we don't have to put it on top of an image or imagine something and make it sound like a specific thing in mind. We just go with the flow of the sound. And having that challenge of having to make the sound work with an image, with a moving image, it was very challenging and very refreshing. So it was so cool to get into Alejandro's head and see how his mind works in that sense.
Working in such a different medium like film for the first time, was there a specific scene or idea that inspired you, that was maybe the starting point for you to inspire the score?
Well, I went to the shoot when they started shooting in New York, and I saw Michael Keaton doing a few scenes, and that was pretty inspiring. Seeing him just giving life to Regan, because I had read the script, but when you read a movie script, it's not like reading a book. There's so much subtext that is not there, that is going to be achieved when the movie is made, and by the actors' role in it, and by the direction and the camera movement, all that is going to be completed by those elements. I think it would be the equivalent, like if I told Alejandro, hey, I'm going to send you my new record, and then just sent them the sheet music. you know, obviously it's not the same. It's going to be, the music is going to be brought to life by the musicians. So the words on the page were brought to life by all these elements. So watching it firsthand, that's what started really inspiring me. And I saw the nature of the film, because initially what I had done is send Alejandro some demos uh, of some rhythmic themes that I had for the main character. So every time you would see Regan coming on the screen, you would hear a certain beat that would identify him. But then Alejandro told me that that's not what he was looking for. He was looking for something more spontaneous, improvised, jazzy, if you will. So he said, you're a jazz musician. I want you to do what you do, improvise and react to what's going on around you.
You mentioned Michael Keaton. The film is, set in a large part. It's sort of set in his mind. It's very much about his mindset. His anxious, unbalanced, mindset throughout the film. How do you go about translating that or expressing that through the drumming that you were doing?
Yeah, drums have a very wide range, I think, of expressiveness. Because it can be, as soft as any instrument, or it can completely bury any other instrument. In the studio, on stage, the drums have a lot of power. So to convey that kind of anarchy of the mind and anxiousness, it wasn't hard, because, if you play a melodic instrument or a harmonic instrument, that can be harder to do, because with the drums, it can be very kind of subjective in a way. It can be very ethereal, because you have no tonal point, no tonal reference. So you can make it sound just really like, if a kitchen was falling down the stairs, basically. and at times that's what seems to be happening in Regan's mind. So that was really cool to do. And another thing that we did for those scenes where he's really going out of his mind is overdubbed a few different tracks of drums, layer them on top of one another, and that completely made it sound like he was absolutely going berserk.
It's very unique to have drums be such a central aspect in a film score. We usually think of scores being orchestral, but now full orchestra. But now that you've done this, do you imagine wanting to do other film scores like this, or do you think this was just sort of like a one-time experience for you?
Well, that's I don't think that's for me to say, because I mean, I would love to do more, but I don't know if somebody's going to recognize that, oh, this guy could probably do something really cool on my film. The thing is not something that I've looked for. It just kind of happened because I knew Alejandro, and Alejandro knew my background. But I have this other whole career as a jazz musician, as a jazz composer, and I compose for other instruments, not just play the drums. And I have like 5 albums under my name, with all original music. So I mean, I can write, I can compose other things. If there's another director that feels like I could do a good job with their film, I would love to do it, of course.
Now, it's an interesting coincidence that your drum score for Birdman sort of coincides with another film that's getting a lot of attention this season. That's all about jazz drumming, Whiplash. Would you ever have thought that film would suddenly become such fertile ground for to showcase jazz drumming?
Never in a million years. Yeah, I think, jazz musicians in general, we get so little of the pie in general, that the fact that there's 2 films the same year that heavily feature drums is just unheard of. I don't know. It's like a perfect storm. I don't know if it's ever going to happen again.
Do you think there's going to be this is going to spark more interest in drumming now? Do you think there might be a surge of people learning the instrument? What do you think about that?
I hope so. I mean, it's such a great uh, thing to get into music in general. And drums is, of course, is my life. I've done it since I was 5 years old, and it's been, it's taking me all over the world, and I've been able to meet amazing people because of it, and play in front of thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So, I don't regret one thing a bit, and I think even if you don't end up doing it as a living, I think music is something that just leaves you so much if you study it for a while or you play an instrument just as a hobby.
You're well known in the music world, and you've won Grammys for your work. But now you're getting a lot of attention for this score. It's kind of a new arena that you're being introduced to. Have you noticed a lot of new people starting to discover not just this music of yours, but also your other body of work?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I mean, I know the score is getting a lot of attention because of its nature and because it's paired up with this incredible piece of art, which is this movie. So it's going to be. I mean, that would be obviously my goal. That through this, more people would be interested in the other stuff that I do, because what I do is, you know, jazz tends to have this cloud over it that it's very hard music to understand, and it's very dissonant. But saying jazz is like saying rock or pop. I mean, there's so many currents that is just really hard to define, with one word. This completely, this wide range of music that is being created nowadays. So, the jazz that I write and that I like to play is mixed with all kinds of stuff. Like I said, I was a rocker when I was growing up, so I mix it a lot with rock, with rhythms from all over the world that I studied a lot. So I think it's very accessible music. It's just music you have to pay a little bit more of attention to, and people are kind of not used to that anymore. I think our generation and the generations that are after us, I think that we all suffer from a little bit of ADD because of social media and snippets of information everywhere. It's really hard to sit down and listen to a whole record, But I think the listener should be challenged all the time, and the public should be challenged to try to get their mind around certain things that normally you wouldn't try to, because you hear a pop song and it's 3 minutes long. So, for example, I'm writing, I actually finished writing, and I'm going to record with my band, which is called Migration, this 1 hour long suite that I wrote for my band, and we're recording it in December, and we're going to be touring it all of next year. So that's going to be challenging in the sense that we're going to play it from beginning to end, with no breaks. And we like to challenge the listener, but I strongly believe that if you give the listener a chance for them to wrap their mind around something that is a little more difficult, usually they can do it.
Now that you've had this experience of this unique experience of collaborating on a film, on something that's so visually driven as well as the music, did that process sort of inspire or maybe inform any of your other music since then?
Yeah, actually, for my next record, what I want to do is also in certain parts overdub drum tracks on top of drum tracks, which is something that I've never done before. It's very common for musicians, in an album to overdub a bunch of guitars or keyboards or voices, but you never do that with drums. It's so rare. So I want to give it a shot because I really love the results, because, I have two hands and 2 feet, and you play with all 4 limbs when you're playing drums. But if you multiply that by 3 or by 4, you can get this huge wall of sound that you would never be able to get just by yourself.
Well, I want to wish you the best of luck with that, and also the best of luck with this film. It's already out, but this upcoming award season, you might add some trophies to join those Grammys on your mantle.
Yeah, I was in LA recently for the HMMAs, the Hollywood Music and Media Awards, and I was nominated. And I went just to check it out. I live in Island, New York, and I thought it would be fun to check it out and see something different. And I was against, Hans Zimmer and uh, um, this other guys, that are very well established in the industry, and I happened to win. And when they said my name, it took me a second to be like, what, and finally I saw on the screen the image of Birdman, and I stood up and got my award, and it was pretty wild.
Well, best of luck on that in the future. I think you might have an Oscar nomination in your future also, and Golden Globe nomination and any number of things. So thank you very much for your time and for talking with me.
I appreciate it. My pleasure.